I'd like to call to order and welcome you to the April 19th, 2010 meeting of the Los Gatos Town Council. This is a good time to turn off your cell phone, and we will listen to the roll call.
Councilmember Steve Rice.
Here.
Councilmember Barbara Spector.
Here.
Vice Mayor Joe Przinski.
Here.
Mayor and Chair Diane McNutt.
Here.
And I'd like to note that Mike Wasserman is absent tonight.
Thank you so much. As you know, we begin each meeting with our Future Leaders program, where we identify a young person in our community who has already shown great achievement and promise for being a significant community leader in the future. And this evening we have with us Carlene Markey. Why don't you come up so they can stare at you while I tell them all about you. Since you have on such a pretty outfit, give it as much airtime as it can. She's a fifth grader at Lexington Elementary School. And a co-founder of a community garden, planted seeds to create a garden in a community area, and she and another student set it up and managed it. And unfortunately, her puppy ate the first pods that grew. And since I got a puppy last week, I can sympathize with how that works. She is an A student, which you probably could tell from just looking at her. She just kind of gives off that image. She'd like to be a lawyer one day and would also like to be an Olympic skier and swimmer, and you could actually do all of those, I think. She's been on a swim team since she was little, and she also does ballet, mountain biking, skiing, and surfing. So if you would like to please stand, she will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, Carlene, whenever you're ready. Just, the flag's right over here. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Applause for Carlene, please. And Carlene and her family are welcome to stay through the whole meeting, but don't feel you have to. So whenever you would like to leave, it's okay. We also have two proclamations this evening, and we'll begin with a proclamation for Arbor Day. And I'd like to ask Rob Moulden to come forward, and Barbara Holden. Rob is the town arborist, and Barbara is the chair of the Parks Commission, and also an avid tree volunteer. So this is kind of a special Arbor Day for us this year, as you're going to find out in a minute when I read you what the proclamation has to say. Whereas the town of Los Gatos recognizes National Arbor Day on Friday, April 30th, 2010, and the town of Los Gatos observes this National Tree Recognition Day. And whereas the National Arbor Day Foundation, in cooperation with the National Association of State Foresters and the USDA Forest Service, established community forestry standards. And whereas the town of Los Gatos established and observes the 4 National Arbor Day Foundation standards: a tree board or department, a tree care ordinance, a comprehensive community forestry program, and an Arbor Day observation. And whereas the town of Los Gatos has been named a Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation for the 30th consecutive year. And whereas the town of Los Gatos is one of only 10 cities in the state of California to achieve 30 or more years as a Tree City USA. And whereas in recognition of the town of Los Gatos' 30th year as a Tree City USA, the town will plant 30 trees on the 30th of April, 2010 to celebrate National Arbor Day. Now therefore be it resolved, I, Diane McNutt, by the virtue of the authority invested in me as the mayor of the town of Los Gatos, deem it appropriate and do hereby proclaim Friday, April 30th, 2010 to be National Arbor Day within the town of Los Gatos, and call upon all citizens to renew its commitment to urban forestry efforts. This is a photo op. And Rob, I would like you, if you could, to give us a little bit of information about where the 30 trees are going to be planted. And you want to come to the microphone?
Sure. The bulk of the observances will be at Bel Gaddis Park. We'll be planting, I believe, 8 to 12 trees there. We will also be planting 19 trees in Howes Park, or Howes Play Lot. And I think that's the bulk of it. Todd, can you expound on that? I think that's it. That's where the Parks Commission will be doing a couple of trees, I believe, at the schools, at Fisher School also.
Great. And I did want to acknowledge that Barbara and her cohort in crime, Dick Conrad, they personally, as individual volunteers, have, I think for 3 or 4 years, purchased 2 years have purchased trees and made arrangements with the schools for special Arbor Day celebrations and planting of trees, adding to our urban forest here. And I think last year we had an estimate as to how many trees we had in town, and I can't remember, but it was like a whole lot.
I'll be telling you a little later.
Okay, all right. So come on out on Friday, April 30th, 10 a.m., Bel Gaddis Park. Help us plant some trees and find out how many trees we have altogether in the town of Las Gaddis. Thank you, folks, very much.
Thank you.
For our second proclamation, I would like to have Ellen Graff and Rosalie Patterson come forward. And after I read the proclamation, I'm going to have them explain their relationship with the American Cancer Society and with this issue. But this is a proclamation related to the activities of American Cancer Society. In case you weren't aware of it, cancer is the second leading cause of death in California. And the American Cancer Society estimates that in 2010, there'll be an additional 6,000 cases of cancer diagnosed just in Santa Clara County. So if it feels like every time you turn around you're finding somebody who has recently been diagnosed or is being treated or is a survivor of cancer, it's because it is so pervasive. So this proclamation says, whereas Paint Our Town Purple, an anti-cancer and awareness campaign, will be celebrated on May 1st, 2010 to unite the Las Gaddis community through the display of purple. I'm starting here tonight. And whereas Relay for Life is the signature activity of the American Cancer Society and honors cancer survivors, remembers those lost to the disease, and provides an opportunity to fight back against cancer. And whereas the Relay for Life of Las Gaddis, a community event designed to bring family, friends, businesses, and organizations together to make a difference in the battle against cancer, will be held at Rolling Hills Middle School on July 31st, 2010. And whereas money raised during the American Cancer Society Relay for Life of Las Gaddis helps support research, education, advocacy, and patient services. Now, therefore, be it resolved, I, Diane McNutt, by the virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the town of Las Gaddis, do deem it appropriate and do hereby proclaim May 1st as Relay for Life Paint Our Town Purple Day and July 31st as Las Gaddis Relay for Life Day in the town of Las Gaddis. And we further urge all citizens to recognize and participate in this anti-cancer campaign held within our town. Ladies, thank you very much.
I believe Diane has said most everything I was going to say. That's all right. Thank you very much. Rosalie and I are both survivors of cancer. We got started with the organization 6 years ago when it began in Las Gaddis for the Relay for Life. And I actually began earlier than that. I am a survivor of 13 years myself. And, excuse me, last year, I took it upon myself to become the food chairperson, and that has been wonderful because this community, as you all know, just comes out beautifully. Nobody told me no when I went around to the businesses and asked if they could help, and they said certainly. And this year, it's been the same thing. So we're going to have a wonderful event. We really encourage those behind me and those in the audience to have a team. Come forward. Police department, set up your own team. Council persons, have your own team. Businesses, have a team. come out and see what happens. It's wonderful. At the bird store, too. And I look forward to seeing you all there. The clubs have gotten involved. The Lions Club has been cooking for the event for 6 years, and that's the evening meal. The Kiwanis Club has taken on the Survivor meal, and we need someone like the Rotarians to do the noon meal, if that's possible. And we have a breakfast the next day, and we also have pizza at midnight. So those are all places that are still available for you to come and volunteer. I get the food for you. How could it be any easier? All you have to do is come and serve. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And as I return to my place up on the dais, note to the audience, this is a good time for you to fill out a speaker card if you wish to speak on any item on tonight's agenda. It's a little card on the back of the seats there, and you hand it to the clerk's office representatives over here to my left. And we'll ask for a closed session report from the town attorney.
There is no closed session report this evening. Speaking of closed sessions.
Next, we have council matters. Do we have any council member who has anything to report? Vice Mayor Przinski.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to report that on behalf of the mayor, I attended today's Silicon Valley Leadership Group CEO Business Climate Summit up in Menlo Park on Sand Hill. And it's the annual event where the CEOs of the county give their analysis of the business climate. I think that it's fair to say that the climate of business is improving, and a lot of the data that was disseminated up there indicated that we will probably be the county that will lead we and the other counties that are considered part of Silicon Valley will lead the recovery for our area probably sooner than a lot. There were 40 electeds and 160 CEOs of various organizations up there, and it was concluded by a very lively and interesting presentation by the governor, who is looking, I think, at the end of his run, and is making some very bold statements about things that could happen between now and November. So look for lots of interesting things out of Sacramento. But on behalf of our town, I think that we've also noticed the same kind of outcome, that the economy is improving, and that all the reports are being returning, and now very positive about not only our property tax take, but also our sales tax. And with that, I think we can be very satisfied and look forward to our budgetary process for the end of this fiscal year. And that's my report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you so much, and thank you for substituting for me this morning. Any other council matters? Seeing none, I have two. First is to remind everyone that it's time once again for the Seniors of Distinction Award, and we are looking for nominations for anyone in our community age 65 plus who has done something really significant and of value to the community. And that can be a full range from serving on a commission or elected office, or volunteering, or running a business, or just doing something truly excellent in their own particular field, professional field. The nomination form is available on the town website, and you can download it there, and the nominations are due on May 21st, and then we'll be announcing the winner of the Senior of Distinction Award in early June. The second item is about a group of Los Gatos High School students who are having the adventure of their lifetime. You may have read about it in the Mercury News today. We do have a photo that they sent me this afternoon. I've been getting reports every couple of hours from Munich, where we had a group of musicians from Los Gatos that were on tour doing performances in Italy. And they were on their way home and had a layover in Munich, and it happened to hit right when the cloud appeared, and they got stuck in Munich. The advisors pulled the strings. There are 80 students, 80 musicians there under the ages of 18, plus their chaperones. It was a party of 120 altogether in the Los Gatos group. And she pulled the strings, and there in the airport had them play Pachelbel, which is one of my favorite soothing pieces of music. And it caught the attention of the media in Germany. And because of that, the airline decided they would pay for a hotel for them, which they are not doing with all of their passengers. So they were able to find a hotel for them. Then they were going to have to leave the hotel or double, triple, quadruple up in rooms because there was another conference coming in, and some of those folks have had trouble arriving, and when they heard the plight of the students, they are kind of doubling up. So instead of having 5 students in a room, they could keep it to a smaller number. They're hoping that they'll be home soon, but they're keeping very busy and exploring Germany. The chaperones are doing a very good job at getting them out and about, and they said that their motto has become, "We will not try to predict, but we will only try to prepare." And they also noted that the kids are holding up a little bit better than the adults, and that somehow doesn't surprise me. And I think we're all in agreement that these are just phenomenal ambassadors for music and for United States and for the town of Los Gatos. So we're very proud of them and hope that they get back soon. And keep your eye on the media for an update on what's going on with them. Manager matters.
Madam Mayor, it's hard to top that, but I do have a couple items to report. First, the police department organized and hosted our first unused prescription drop-off this last Saturday. We had over 40 families participate with 3 to 4 large bags of medicines that were not flushed down the drain or taken to our landfill. This coming Wednesday, the Community Development Department is hosting our General Plan Forum over at the large room at the ARC, the former neighborhood center, from 4:30 to 6:30. And this is an opportunity for the public to come in a drop-by interactive program to learn about the updates that are proposed in the 4 areas the council has directed: recreation, environment, seniors, and youth. So that's this Wednesday, 4:30 to 6:30, over at the ARC as a drop-in program. On Thursday, the 22nd, which is Earth Day, our library is hosting Wild Things for the kids. And no, the kids are not the wild things. It will be a plethora of small animals that will be come and showcased to the youth of our community on the front lawn from 4 to 5. And last, the volunteers for the town of Los Gatos, who we rely upon in every department, will be recognized on the 27th from 5 to 7 p.m. That concludes staff report, and now we'll turn it over again to Rob Molden, the town arborist, who is going to share with you tonight's Did You Know?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. As I said, my name's Rob Molden. I'm the town arborist. I have been for 22 of the 30 years that we've been Tree City, USA. Did you know the town of Los Gatos was green long before anyone recognized the benefits of going green? The town recognized at an early state that 1 tree produces enough oxygen to keep a family of 4 breathing for a whole year. I mean, that just blows me away. And that when the trees are properly planted, they reduce air conditioning costs as well as reducing stress. The town has been planting over 100 trees a year for the last 22 years in parking strips and parks, and maintaining over 20,000 trees town-wide. The town uses the mulch that's generated from our tree trimming programs for weed control, which reduces our pesticide use, as well as gives us water savings in our parks and our easements. Something you may not know is the town supplies trees free to residents on request for planting on park strips and right-of-ways. All we ask is that the residents water the trees for 3 years until they're established. every tree that is removed in Los Gatos is replaced with approximately 3 new trees. The town of Los Gatos has a tree ordinance that protects our urban forest and can be found on our town website, and you can find most of the information there. But if you can't, you can contact me at 408-399-5770. I'd just like to say it's nice to have a council, a Parks Commission, and citizens as a whole who support this program. And I think it's important that we don't just pay lip service to Tree City USA. Thanks. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you so much. We have no questions, but we will see you on the 30th
All right. Looking forward
in our
to
digging
it.
clothes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Larson? No. Okay. Next, we have consent items, and these are items that can be acted on in one motion unless anyone on council would like to pull a consent item. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to pull a consent item? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next, we have verbal communication. This is an opportunity for anyone in the public to speak on an item not on tonight's agenda. I have no cards, and I see no one coming forward. So we'll go ahead and move into the other agenda items. Council, please note, we have desk items on number 9 and number 11. I believe those are the only 2 desk items. Is that correct, staff? Okay. So we'll begin with agenda item number 9. This is a continuation of an item from the April 5th meeting on adoption of a resolution continuing certain department fees, rates, and charges, and amending certain fees, rates, and charges for fiscal year 2010-11. And we will or we will not have a staff report to start. We will have a staff report, brief one, since we've already been over this once, and then we'll open it up for questions from council. Jenny?
Great, thank you. Yes, I will keep it brief tonight. What I wanted to do is take some time to go over what council had in terms of questions at the last meeting, the drivers of the current cost recovery level that was slightly problematic. One of the main drivers is GASB 45. As you know, this requires cities to reflect the liabilities associated with post-retirement costs. And the town began to pre-fund its annual required contribution of $1.8 million back in 08-09. And to date, we have pre-funded our ARC by almost $1 million. PERS rate increases is another reason why cost recovery level was 56%. Due to the investment losses, as you know, PERS increases for the employer contributions has risen significantly, and to date we've also incurred a cost of $1 million in that area. Townwide administrative overhead was another category. The 2005 study included department overhead. It did not include both department and administrative overhead, and so that contributed to 20 to 25% of the service costs. And then the last is changes in regulatory environment. We've had a number of changes since 2005 when the last fee study was done. These include CEQA, NPDES, building codes were changed, as well as the town has also adopted its own residential and commercial design guidelines, all of which have increased our review time. And then one last note I wanted to point out was that we really drilled down in terms of the testing of productive hours. And what we did is we ensured that there was an agreement between the estimated volume of work that was actually performed with the total time that was available. So if someone was looking at grading permits and said, you know, I'm working on 10 a day and 40% of my time is dedicated to that, we're going to be asking the question, well, what are you doing with 60%, the other 60%? And in the 2005 study, it did not drill down that deeply. And so we revealed a lot of this information through in-depth interviews with staff through our consultant. So what you have before you in attachment 1 is the new deleted and reduced fees, which council had no additional comment on. And also you have some fee categories in front of you as well. just really quickly. The attachment for the new and deleted reduced fees talks about, are all reflected in the updated fee schedule, and it also excludes the business license processing fee. And then moving to the fee categories, we have 3 categories. One is up to 10%, the other is between 15 and 25, and then the last is for increases that were over 25. There are no proposed fees that fell between the 10 to 15 range. It's staff recommendation that council adopt the proposed fees as reflected in the comprehensive fee schedule. However, understanding that there are a variety of increases that we are proposing, we did come across some alternatives that you may want to consider. The first is to maintain fees at current levels with the exception of the recommendations of the new deleted and reduced fees. Or council may want to consider capping the proposed fees increases at a specified percent with subsequent increases that could be considered in future years. Another option would be to reduce or eliminate selected fee increases that reflect council priorities. We've actually identified a few priorities for council's consideration. They are highlighted in bold on your attachment. And one last option to think about is the elimination of the inclusion of some or all townwide overhead costs. And then we could direct staff to adjust those fees accordingly. I would like to point out that in doing this, you would reduce the full cost recovery rates up to 20%. However, it may or may not impact individual fees depending on how the administrative overhead was allocated. And then the last slide I have is a slide of new construction fee comparison. You may have seen this slide before at our prior meeting, but this essentially reflects the town's current cost for a 35 square foot custom home with a 500 square foot garage. As you can see, Los Gatos falls in about $8,000 for this type of building permit, and it's really pretty much between the averages, with the highest being Palo Alto at $14,000. We wanted to show you this to see where we are benchmarking currently with our current fees. And then the proposed fees would adjust that accordingly depending on which fees you're identifying by, anywhere between 5 and 10% for a new planning permit or building application permit. And that concludes my remarks. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have questions of staff? Mrs. Spector.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just on that last slide, that comparison, do we know whether the other cities involved, when they did their update, and if they are a cost recovery jurisdiction?
Most jurisdictions will say that they're a cost recovery, but at varying levels. I'm going to ask our consultant to come up and see if he can add or contribute to that response.
Good evening. I'm Dan Edds. Let me thank you again for the opportunity of working with your town and the very fine staff that you have. My perspective on cost recovery levels from different communities is such that most communities that I work with will say they have a cost recovery policy or practice of full cost recovery. In reality, the reality is most of them really don't follow their practice or their policy. It is not unusual at all to come into a community and to do a project like this, and it's the first one they've done in 10, 15 years. So to come up with a perspective of what their practice is versus their policies, it's really pretty difficult. You know, I'm working with a city in Oregon right now, and it's the first one they've ever done. And so, but if you asked them, they would say they have their policy or practices for full cost recovery.
Madam Mayor, if I might add, as the council is aware, I chair the city managers group for Santa Clara County, and at our last meeting, we did a poll of the members of all the cities present. It was about 11 jurisdictions of how many were doing comprehensive fee updates and studies. And while we did not disclose which individual jurisdictions responded, there were 4 to 5 that said they are doing comprehensive studies. And we know that Campbell has their fee study on the agenda tomorrow night because it was a shared consulting project we did to save money.
Other questions from council? Vice Mayor Brzezinski.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, Ms. Hariyama, appreciated the additional information regarding those percentage changes from the 2005 review. The Gatsby and PERS, and particularly the regulatory environmental information was very appropriate, and we do appreciate that. Question I have for you in terms of this benchmarking chart that is on the screen right now, that's projection of current. When we include the new fee structure, where will this look, or what will this look like when we make that move? Will we be beyond the median at that point? Because it seems like right now we're pretty much right in the middle. Could you comment to that?
I'm going to go ahead and ask Dan to come back up, but I think it's probably going to put us between 10 and 15% above where we're at right now. It's hard to say because what I'd like to do is have the consultant identify exactly what fees applied in this scenario.
Yeah, the exact fees that applied in this graphic that you see is for plan review and inspection services only. Every city has additional services and fees that they tack onto that, impact fees and that sort of thing. So we looked at just the cost or the current price for plan review and inspection services only. And to be frank, I'd have to go back and look at the results, but I believe, if I remember right, I believe it would bring you up to pretty close to Saratoga, their pricing level, if you will. It certainly was not as high as Palo Alto. I believe it was in that Saratoga range, though.
All right, then a follow-up to that question, if I might.
Yes.
Are any of the other cities that you are portraying here engaged in a similar process? You mentioned Campbell, but are any of the others adjusting their fees? Because the chart's only going to be as valuable as the currency. And if there are other fees being raised, then it could keep us, again, at the median, even though we might go up to the 10,000 plus mark.
I believe that Saratoga has done a comprehensive fee study recently. I don't, within the last 2 or 3 years. The others, I just don't know.
All right.
Madam Mayor, I can clarify. I can confirm that Saratoga is not engaged at this time, but San Jose, the County of Santa Clara annually engages in this process. Gilroy's last fee study was actually in 2000, according to a recent email I received today. Cupertino was in 2003, and I did not receive statistics on the others, Los Gatos, Los Altos Hills, in terms of what their activity is. But I would gather to say that a lot of cities will be considering it given the economy.
Vice Mayor?
All right, thank you. That's fine.
I had 2 questions. On the engineering review, which is an hourly charge, it appears to have the biggest jump of any of the fees that are there. And I wonder if you could give me an example, because it's a percentage, as to what this actually means in terms of dollars.
That's correct. So this surcharge would apply to applications only. So, for example, under the proposed fee for a single-family resident in the hillside wanting to build a house, it would cost about $6,000 for your permit, and then on the current surcharge, it would be $600. The proposed surcharge would be $900. So there's a $300 difference.
Okay. And my other question possibly is more for the manager than for you, but as we talk about all the hourly tracking and how you're wanting to drill down even more, I'm in a billable time business. Mrs. Spector's in a billable time business. We're used to keeping track of our time in 6 or 10 or 15-minute increments, depending on what system you use. Are you starting to move in that direction? And if yes, is it only for certain positions or across the board? And are you actually looking at using a software program to gather that data?
Mayor, I'll ask Ms. Hariyama to provide a detailed answer, but there's really only two divisions we're moving to selected hourly fees. One is for the set of new fees in the attorney's office for particular and special review for projects that are coming through that are above and beyond the norm, and then also in the building division. We have quite a few fees that can be a 4-hour minimum on a weekend because that's the callback minimum for an employee coming in. And Ms. Hariyama has talked to both offices about how they'd implement the hourly billing program.
Anytime a position is having to track any type of hourly billing with a project, they'll use one of two mechanisms, either through a spreadsheet mechanism to track those. For instance, the attorney may set up a project list through that. Right now, in the planning department, we actually have an application that we can use through our Excel program that actually has a built-in tracking mechanism. We'll be looking into launching that, hopefully within the next fiscal year, but in the interim, we'll continue to use our spreadsheets that we typically use right now. But the exciting piece is that we do have technology that will help us be more efficient in tracking those billable hours.
Okay. Any other questions? Then this is a continuation, so I'm going to reopen the public hearing portion this evening, and I do have one card, so if anyone else would like to speak on this item, they should go ahead and put a card in. But in the meantime, Freddie Howell, Las Gatos bird watcher on Blossom Hill, the source of my bird seed that they go through pounds and pounds every week.
Yes, they're eating quite well.
Yes, they are.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. As you know, I've just changed the name of our store to the Las Gatos Birdwatcher, and the sign permit process was very daunting. We did have some extenuating circumstances because our landlord had not finalized the program with the town. But for a $6,200 sign, and that's the new outside sign as well as replacing the two blade signs underneath the awning, my planning fee was $352.26. My plan check, and that took 3 weeks. And I must say that Chris Marks and Judy Gilley were very understanding and very helpful. So I've got to give them good marks on that. But that took 3 weeks to get just the planning review. And then there was $104.90 for plan check and $378.57 for a building permit, which brings it up to $835.73, plus the contractor's license, because he doesn't do much work in the town of Las Gatos because it is so expensive. And so the $835.73 is 13.4% of my sign. And it took almost 4 weeks to get my permits. And I know that there are a lot of people in Las Gatos who do not get sign permits, and I understand why. It's just so complicated and so long and so expensive. So from someone who's just gone through it, that's all I need to say. Thank you.
You know, I think you might want to pause there. I have a feeling there might be a council question, or perhaps not. Or perhaps not.
Or perhaps not.
Okay, thank you for sharing your story. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Then I'll go ahead and close the reopened public hearing, and we're back to council for motion, discussion, additional questions. Vice Mayor Brzezinski?
Yes, I am very concerned. I've heard previously that it's somewhat onerous to go through the sign permit process. And our job is to facilitate people's doing business in the town and to allow our business community to be a thriving community and not to set roadblocks up, but to make things smoother. We decided a long time ago that we wanted a streamlining of our processes. And from the testimony, it's obvious this wasn't a very streamlined process. So I guess I would ask for staff response on what we see as staff in relationship to this. That's the first part. And is this something that's reported that was an aberration, or is this fairly typical of our process?
Unless our Director of Community Development is particularly familiar with this case, we'll have to respond in general rather than the specifics without looking at the case file. But given what Ms. Howell said, if there was the program, the signed program for the center had not been concluded, roughly the first charge she mentioned, the 350, it was approximately that, may have been associated with the planning review, correct? A new sign, okay. So that was the planning review. Okay. Well, then the building permit you couldn't get out of, and the plan check. So I'm not sure why the sign program was a relevant factor. So it's why we need to review the case file to see what the component charges were. But we have a tight regulatory environment for signage in the town. It's part of the character of the community to maintain, particularly in downtown, which this location I don't believe is. But the plan process, the plan check, and the building permit are fairly standard pieces of every development application. There's a planning process, then a construction drawing review, which is the plan check, and then the building permit. So,
if I might comment?
Sure.
Okay. I appreciate that. Okay. But I do think that if we do a anecdotal evaluation of some of our recent work in relationship to signage and look to the what seems to be our standard, yes, indeed, we want to maintain a good sign environment. We do not want to have the environment impacted negatively by our signage, commercial signage. However, that's to me an aesthetic issue, and I don't know whether or not the aesthetics played that significantly in the report that was being made. I would doubt that there was any changes in the sign the sign configuration as we went through this process. So I would say that it would be at least worthwhile for us to take a look and perhaps give some feedback to council regarding this, because we do not want to make jumping through the hoops any more difficult than it is. Now, I believe the Director of Community Development has the mic and wants to make some comment.
Thank you. I would like to just add a couple of comments. Although I'm not familiar with the actual specific case, I am familiar with the shopping center and the concerns with their sign program. They do not have a formal sign program on file with the town. We've been working with them ever since I've been here to trying to get a formal sign program. What that does is it tells the town which each tenant is allowed in overall signage, how much square footage they may have, and that's always based upon the amount of frontage that they have. In the spirit of trying to be customer friendly, we've allowed 2 additional signs to go in while we're still trying to get the sign program from the shopping center owner. And I suspect that's what held this one up, is that we still have not gotten that sign program from them. So normally it would not take this amount of time to get a sign approved, especially if you have a sign program that says what each tenant is allowed in sign area. So I have to believe it's just we have not been able to get that sign program from the owner of the shopping center.
Okay, I know that we've moved into signage versus fees, so we're a little bit far afield. But I would like to see us respond back to council regarding just exactly what Ms. Rooney has commented on at this point in time. Now, in terms of the fees, my assumption is that our new fee structure wouldn't have significant impact on the fees that were charged to Ms. Howell. Is that an incorrect assumption, or is that correct?
I'm sorry, could you repeat your last
Sure.
part of it? Thank you.
The question is, with our increase in our fee structure, would that impact the process and the fees that Ms. Howell had to pay to get her permits?
I believe the manager is looking that up right now.
Okay. That's fine for me at this point.
Okay. And while the manager is looking that up, I just, and I'm sure there'll be more conversation between staff and council and our public who spoke here tonight and others on this specific situation. But I think what's relevant is that we want to make sure, as we look at these fees, which I'm actually pretty comfortable with the fees that are here. The increases, I think, are quite modest and realistic. But we have to really watch very closely, because if it starts being too much, then we're covering our costs, but we're not going to have as much work to do, because businesses aren't going to want to locate here, residents aren't going to want to build here or expand here. And so, you know, we have to keep the community actually serving the community, keep it business friendly, keep it resident friendly, customer friendly. So as I said, I'm comfortable with this, but let's not go too much farther, I don't think. Mrs. Spector, you had a question, or Mr. Larson, did you have an answer?
First, again, without looking at the case file and the component parts of the fees that were paid, I can't really differentiate from this without looking at the basis. But, for example, on page 15 of the fee schedule, the sign application does not show increases. However, we do know plan check and building permits did. So it would have to be applying those specific fees against the basis of the application that was turned in, which I don't have in front of me. So there might have been some increase to some portion of the fees paid. In terms of the broader question of economic vitality in ensuring we have a strong business community, every community varies in its fee structure. Los Gatos does not charge a parks fee. We don't charge Quimby Act fees as other jurisdictions do. Our community benefit program is relatively modest compared to other communities, and every community varies. In exchange, we have an extraordinary conditional use permit process, because we use that as a primary discretionary mechanism to ensure the quality and type of operations we want throughout the community. It's what I liked about the graphic that Ms. Haruyama presented, is that it was for a total project, a 3,500 square foot home with a 500 foot garage. What were the building and plan check fees associated with that? And so it kind of helps eliminate some of the differences between jurisdictions and looks at the end product. This is certainly an issue we can review before we bring back the fee study a year from now. It won't be a comprehensive fee study, but there'd be incremental changes, and we could try to drill down on the economic vitality impacts before bringing that forward in a year.
Thank you. Council, are there any other questions or a motion? Mr. Rice.
Yeah, I start with with agreement with the mayor of that I don't find that what we see here to be particularly out of line. I think that when we look at the fact that this hasn't been reviewed in 5 years, one of the things we may want to think about doing is reviewing these a little bit more often than every 5 years, making smaller adjustments. The fact of the change in regulatory environment, Ms. Hirayama, I appreciate your specifying out where those changes came from. It was much clearer for me to see what's happening. And it can also be from our own passing of regulations and rules here in the town that drive up the cost for cost recovery. As I said 2 weeks ago, I do believe that it's prudent for us to recover our costs in these areas. So with that in mind, I'm willing to make a motion unless another council member has comments to make first.
Why don't you go ahead and complete your sentence, and then we'll see if they have other comments.
I'll move that we adopt the fee structure that is attached to our report as attachment 1.
Second. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item? Mr. Brzezinski.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to make just one comment in relationship to the graph showing our benchmarking with the other cities that were chosen. I think it's really important that we stay within that range. And had the benchmark revise shown us to be at the top of the scale, that would have been a problem. And I think that it's obvious from your description of these cities that we're looking at, there have been very few that are doing the same kind of drilling down on fees and cost recovery that we've just done. And I would assume if they're going to be wise in the way they look at the charges and the costs of doing business, that these other cities will as well. And I would think the end result would be we would remain somewhat within the middle of the pack. That's an okay place for me to be. It would be very problematic to me if we ended up at the top of the pack. And with that, I can support this motion.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. And now we move on to agenda item number 10. This is also a continuation from the April 5th meeting, introduction of an ordinance of the Town of Los Gatos, amending Article 7 of Chapter 15 of the Town Code relating to the mitigation of road impacts caused by construction projects. And again, we will begin with a staff report by Jenny Hayarama.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, we do not have a staff report prepared, but I have received a few questions in advance from council asking to clarify a few items related to the road impact fee. So if it's all right with you, I'd like to do that.
Yes, please.
First of all, the application of the road impact fee is $1 per square foot for every square foot added. And it applies to new development, and it also applies to any residential or commercial additions. What it doesn't apply to is it doesn't apply to any kind of remodeling that's going on in the home or the commercial business. And it doesn't apply to retaining walls or swimming pools or things of that nature. And recognizing that, staff would go ahead and review and report back some potential options to address the remodeling, the retaining walls, because there could be a potential equity issue here. And there's some opportunities either when we bring the traffic impact fee study back to you for consideration in the fall, or the grading ordinance, or even perhaps at the next user fee discussion in 2011. Staff can come up with some potential alternatives for your consideration. The last item I wanted to bring up and discuss is the administrative costs that are discussed in the ordinance. In Section 4B2 of the ordinance, it talks about using the fee to offset administrative costs. And per state law, we're allowed to recoup our administrative costs that are associated with updating and administering the fee, but I wanted to clarify that this would only offset direct administrative costs, not overhead costs. And we would be happy to provide additional language clarifying that point in the ordinance if council so directs. And that really concludes my comments. I'll be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you. Council questions? So many. Mrs. Spector this time.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was one of the people who had a question about how this funding would be, these funds would be used. To make it simplistic for Ms. Hariyama, the money comes in. We need the money for roads. We don't have a dedicated source of funding for our roadways. My concern is, when I read the proposed ordinance, specifically this Section B2, it references administrative costs, and then actually on the next page, page 4, it talks about the funding being used for a facility. All right. And I just wanted to assure myself, or have you assure me, that if I vote for this ordinance, the funding would be used for our capital improvement projects and not be part of our operating budget. And those words in this ordinance give me concern.
I'd like to just go ahead and comment on that. The monies that are collected go straight into GFAR, and they go into a capital projects fund. And that fund is dedicated specifically for road infrastructure, nothing else. You cannot use it for anything else. So I hope that piece of it reassures you. With respect to your comment on number 10, the acquisition of capital equipment, as it relates to an intrinsic part of a facility, there are a lot of other associations with transportation and impacts, and that could be a drainage, a catch basin. A facility could also be a pump system, but as long as it's tied to transportation and road infrastructure, that's what we're looking for, and it would be nothing else.
Mrs. Spector, does that answer your question?
Yes, I guess my yes, but question for the town attorney, given the information we just received, is it your feeling or opinion that we needed to revise the wording, or do you feel as though the wording in the proposed ordinance captures what Ms. Hayarama said?
Well, there's probably three components that should give you some comfort. One is the wording of the ordinance. Two is the oversight, both by the town management and the council. When individual expenditures come up, you're usually told what the source of funds is, and you can question at that time. Probably the greatest thing that should give you comfort is the fact that this ordinance, by its terms, is subjecting itself and the fee collected thereby to the State's Mitigation Fee Act, which is subject to audit and refund if it's not designated, not used, or inappropriately used. So there's a lot of checks and balances, and truly, of all the fees you collect, anything under the Mitigation Fee Act, there is literally a third party can come in and make sure we're playing fairly with the money. And so would a city auditor that comes in and audits our books.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Well, I think I was the other one who raised that question. And I do believe that it was appropriate that each of us surface that question, because what we want right now is to find that revenue stream to fund our roads repair program. And we don't have enough right now. We're not going to achieve in our standard processing this year enough to do justice. We've already noticed in the last manager's advisement to the council that we have dropped in our PCI from 74, which was kind of an optimum number for us, to a 69, I believe. And the problem with that is that it seems relatively innocuous in terms of a number set, but the further we drop in our pavement control, the more expense will accrue later on when we have to do significant repair rather than just to maintain. And so to bring another opportunity for financial infusion into this fund is really significant for the town. And I do think, therefore, that I would agree with Councilwoman Spector that we do not want this relatively small inflow of money, but very significant for our processes, to in any way slip into general fund. We want it to be dedicated as strongly as we dedicated the Vasona sale monies into our sports and recreation fund. So I'm assured. I think that it makes a lot of sense that we move forward with this. But I do appreciate the kind of the twist that we put on that particular piece of language.
And I just want to clarify with staff that if we chose to just do this for 1 year as opposed to the 2 years as the ordinance is currently drafted, we could make that change just by eliminating L in section 1 when we get to that part, and that would take care of it?
Correct.
Okay. Council, if you have no other questions, I'm going to reopen the public hearing. So I will reopen the public hearing, and we have one card. Marcia Jensen. Oh, there you are.
Good evening. I'm Marcia Jensen. I didn't intend to speak on this, but I'm here to provide you with some anecdotal information. I'm not fully aware of all the ins and outs of the ordinance you're considering, but as someone who is now living on a street being heavily impacted by construction, I just want to tell you that I hope that, well, you might have heard in some of my other comments that I'm very interested in nexuses between funding and the area that's impacted. So when I am on the corner where I live on Caldwell and Bella Vista Avenue, and I watch the trucks go by with the dirt hauling and the beeping and the trucks that can't go around the corner that I watched this afternoon come up on my sidewalk and hit my tree and almost hit the sidewalk, hit the stop sign, I hope that all of the funds from this don't go to a general fund, but that the people in the streets that are actually impacted by the construction get some benefit. And particularly when a private enterprise shuts down a public street for an entire week, which this particular project did last week, there's a real impact. And so if the town can do something through this ordinance to collect some funds to actually try to mitigate or alleviate that impact, I think that would be a very good thing for the town to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no one else, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and back to council. And this is one of those items, council, where we have quite a few steps. So I think, if we think we're going to take action on this tonight, that I'll go ahead and direct the clerk to read the ordinance title.
Ordinance of the Town of Los Gatos amending Article 9 of Chapter 15 of the Town Code relating to mitigation of road impacts caused by construction projects.
Thank you, and I'll ask for a motion to waive the reading of the full ordinance.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Now, if there is a motion to introduce the ordinance, and if you have any changes that you want to make on the draft ordinance, or other comments, or not approve it, or what's your pleasure? Vice Mayor Brzezinski.
Yes, I'm going to move to introduce the ordinance and to instruct the clerk to publish the ordinance. I guess we have two choices here, huh?
A summary of the ordinance is what is recommended.
Okay, then that's the one I'm going to recommend, the summary of the ordinance. And with that, I guess the question is, with that caveat, that the language in Section 4B2 be revised to reflect the council's intention.
And to read into the record, it would be to read entirely for Section 2, to reimburse the town of Los Gatos to offset only direct administrative costs, parenthesis, not overhead, parenthesis, or comma, associated with administering and updating the construction activities mitigation fee. And then the second discussion from council was to strike Section L on the previous page.
Okay, so that's my motion.
Is there a second? So we have a motion to introduce the ordinance with two changes, eliminating item number Section 1L, making it just 1 year, and then the wording on Section 4B2 to clarify that the money does not go into overhead but stays in a separate account that will be used strictly for road construction. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Mr. Attorney, am I done, or is there anything more I have to do on this one?
You were done on this one.
Okay, great. All right, we'll move to our last agenda item of the evening. This is agenda item 11, discussion of proposed redistricting of Santa Clara Valley Water District. And Mr. Larson, are you going to do the staff report or just an introduction?
I'll just be doing an introduction. We've provided the council information that arose late on Friday and was verified over the weekend. The Santa Clara Valley Water District is undergoing a redistricting process pursuant to state legislation. The one piece of new information that wasn't provided in the staff report today is that this will really be a one-year redistricting, in that given we're now going through a census, the districts that the district adopts for next November will then have to be modified for 2012. So we'll have opportunity over the next 2 years to discuss this issue again, should the council wish.
Thank you. I have no cards on this. Is there anyone in the public who'd like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none. Council, what do you want to do with this thing?
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Rice.
I sit as the vice chair of the Santa Clara Valley Water District Commission, and we met on April the 7th, and this whole topic was never even raised with the commission. I'd like to suggest we might want to just accept the report and file it at this point.
Comments from other council? I can tell you what I think. I don't like this. I don't like it's being presented with 20-some different options, possibly are in the top running, no background, no sound effects. I think it's too complex, too last minute, too rushed, and I'm not sure they really give a care what we think. But council, anyone from the right side want to say anything?
Right side. Well, I'll say that it seems rather odd that we have an agenda item for the Water District for our May 3rd meeting, I believe, and yet this is going to be decided April 27th. And it only by happenstance came to our attention. So I would be more than happy to go with the recommendation from Councilman Rice that we saw the report, we have no position to take.
Mrs. Spector?
Yes, I totally agree with everyone else. We have an item here that people have been working on for, a year. They have 20-some-odd variations on a proposal. It has practical ramifications, it has political ramifications, and we have 2 or 3 days to consider it. I don't think so.
Okay. I don't think we need a motion to note and file, do we? No? Okay. In that case, the council meeting is adjourned.